Today we have a special episode for you. I met with Florian Games from Munich, Germany. Florian is the CEO of Midas Touch Consulting, and he's an independent analyst and investor, big into gold and also into blockchain and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So today's episode is a bit different. We talk a little bit about private jets, but we go into talking about gold and how gold is going to be performing in the next few years. A bit about the history of the whole thing with gold. We touch on the subject of silver, then we get into talking about Bitcoin and geopolitics. You'll hear Florian's take, whether he thinks there's going to be a war between China and the US, which is interesting. We're going to talk about Donald Trump and is he going to save the world or not. So lots of interesting content from a geopolitical standpoint, an economical standpoint, bit of forecasting on where Bitcoin's going to go and the other cryptocurrencies, how that can play into the business jet world as well, how the importance of business jets if there is a war with China, and that the whole Ukraine-Russia situation. So lots of content today, little touch on private jets, but a lot of talk about geopolitics and how that's going to affect the markets, and of course private jet travel as well. So a little bit different for you today, but very, very interesting. So I encourage you to stay through the 45-minute interview. Lots of juicy content, lots of ideas, which will help you with your personal economy, because that's what it's all about. It's about our personal economy. I mean, Donald Trump's not going to be saving the world, as we do say at the very end, and we'll explain why. It's really down to us individually to do something to be able to be safe, keep our families safe, and invest our money wisely. And Florian will be touching on giving us a few tips here on what we can do to create that personal financial strategy, which is really, really key. So let's get straight into the interview now with Florian Games. Off we go. Florian, welcome to BizJet TV. And let's kick off with, you've been in the crypto world for a while now, but you've also been in the gold and silver world. Tell us a bit about how's gold and silver doing these days? Where do you see it going? And also let's move into crypto and Bitcoin and how all this plays into private jet travel and that, because as lockdowns have changed a lot of the way we live and the way we do business. Over to you, Florian.
Thanks, Fabrizio, for having me. Well, first of all, let's talk about precious metals. Gold is basically, that's actually my assumption, in a large secular bull market since the early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
We had this double bottom in 2001, $250 an ounce back then, when the British finance minister dumped the rest of the British gold to the market at the lowest price in 20 years. The famous Gordon Brown double bottom in the gold market. So that's more than 20 years ago. And then gold went up from $250 to $1,920 within the next following 10 years.
Yeah.
Topped out in 2011. And then we had like a 4 or 5 year correction. Important low at $1,050 in 2015. And since then, gold went up again, basically doubling in price over the following 5 years. Then again, important top in August 2020. So this is exactly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then, gold is basically somehow correcting that move from $1,000 to $2,075.
Yeah.
And we are still in that correction. We have seen a strong move into the beginning of the year until early March, during the geopolitical tensions and the drama playing out in the Ukraine. Gold went up to $2,070 again. But it didn't manage to make a new all-time high. It failed $5 below those highs from August 2020. So gold still is in a correction, digestion, consolidation, however you want to call it. It's been moving between 1680 and 2070 for the last 2 years. And I assume that this will probably continue for a while. We might even see new lows over the next few months, given the recessive struggle the markets are in. However, given the dollar strength, gold has held up very well. And we have seen over the last 10 days a strong bounce in gold already. We've seen a low at 1680 once again. That's the number where gold bottomed out 3 times last year. Again, that low has held. And it went up $100 within the last 10 days. Now it's coming back a little bit. I think it's still within this overall consolidation, but all it takes for gold to strongly move higher is a new all-time high, or at least a breakout above $2,050. I think that will be the signal. Now the next leg higher in that bull market is going to start. And this has been in the making for the last 10 years. So there has been a lot of pressure being building over the last 10 years. I think once we get this breakout, you will see a massive, very strong move in gold higher, at least 2,500, probably $3,000 in the short term within a few months. And then very likely in a following few years, a move towards 5,000, maybe even 9,000, $10,000, who knows. So because this has been building so much, for such a long time now. So that's the big picture analysis. In the short to midterm, we have to be careful. We are in this contracting environment. Everything in the financial markets is down, whether it's your stocks, your cryptos, your real estate. Your private jet is also probably cheaper now than a year ago.
It's actually more expensive, but
it's more expensive.
Yeah, because of the lockdowns. Inventory is really, really low. It's never been so low at the moment. It's like 2-3%, when it's usually about 10 to 12. We have seen in the last couple of months prices stabilize, but prices have actually gone up about 20% compared to last year.
Yes. Okay.
And that's just because people want to travel, people want to buy a plane. And so, it's just gone the other way. I don't see prices dropping, but I see them stabilizing now. But that's because of the lockdowns. Had the lockdowns not happened, then we would have seen a decrease in price like we did in 2008, 2009, where they dropped, some dropped 50% in value.
Right. Yeah. So it's supply chain issues basically.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have a higher demand because the whole environment, how we live and work, has changed so much.
Yeah, exactly. What about silver? I mean, silver is often talked about because of the 2,000 technological applications it has, the utility of silver. Silver obviously costs a lot less than gold. Do you see silver moving up as well? And do you see the ratio between price of gold and silver getting closer to 12 to 1, which is where it should be, instead of, I think, 50 to 1 it is at the moment?
It's even higher. Yeah, I mean,
even higher. Yeah, you're right. It's higher than 50 to 1.
When all the silver bucks are talking constantly about it, and it will happen at some point. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly when, and usually it will take more time than we all anticipated. And silver, I call it the schizophrenic diva, because it won't show up until the final hour of the big precious metals bull market. It's like when the party is really going hot, then silver will show up, and this is like the grand finale. This is like actually the end is around the corner here. I better move out of the market soon. But look, in 2001 to 2011, silver had started its real run in 2010, when it started from $17 to $15 within 8 months.
Yeah, and it hit 50, didn't it? It hit $50 at one point, and then went down.
It's the all-time high from 1980. So just on that very big picture assessment, you can say silver is one of the few commodities trading way below its 1980 all-time high, right? Yeah. So that makes it undervalued. I have no doubt about it. But again, silver has this crazy character. It goes back and forth, crazy moves, and then finally, in the final stage of the bull market in precious metals, it goes nuts. Yeah. So it will very likely hit 3-digit numbers down the road over the next 5 years, or maybe 8 years, or maybe 4 years, who knows? But it will take more time, and you have to be very patient. I recommend to only play it physically, not to trade it with leverage, because it's such a crazy tiny market.
Yeah.
And, but of course, in an inflationary environment, silver will be the best performer overall. But it's not a straight line up. It's unfortunately a wild back and forth, and then suddenly it goes nuts.
Yeah. Now, of course, you've been into gold mainly over the last few years, and then Bitcoin suddenly comes onto the scene. You looked at it and you thought, this is interesting, and you started to trade in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Tell us more about Bitcoin, crypto, and the blockchain. And how do you think this is going to play into the private jet world? Because you did mention to me about a gentleman you met recently that's set up a private jet service for crypto people, which is interesting.
Right. Well, I got into Bitcoin in 2013, mainly because, I was aware of it already and started tracking and following it, but then like really getting my hands on it was when the Cyprus crisis happened, and people suddenly, within a few days, lost basically 50% of their money in their bank account, right?
Yeah.
And Bitcoin back then was trading below $100.
Yeah.
So that's when I first got into it. And I really came from that precious metals, gold bug, libertarian background into Bitcoin.
Now, one quick question. Do you think one of the reasons why gold and silver is still kind of sitting there and hasn't really done the big jump that people were predicting it's going to do you think a lot of the gold and silver investor people moved into Bitcoin when they saw this crypto thing happening? And that could be one of the reasons why gold and silver is still sitting there?
Yeah, for sure. There has been, I mean, quite a few well-known guys announcing that they sold their gold and went into Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Yeah.
And also just generally, lots of the liquidity has been channeled into the crypto markets in
Yeah.
2000.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that myself. Yeah.
Because simply prices went up much stronger than gold.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons. But then again, I mean, gold has been anticipating all these expansions of the balance sheets way ahead before everybody else. That's why it topped out in August 2020 already after a 100% up move, which is quite a large move for this old-fashioned traditional metal.
Yeah.
So I don't. I mean, I've been always saying that I believe you want to have both gold and Bitcoin.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Versus each other.
Yeah.
I really love this analogy that it's like the yin and yang, the warm and cold, summer and winter, digital and analog. All this, it gives you a complementary unit of a true safe haven. I think you want to have both.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, makes sense.
Physical scarcity of gold and the digital scarcity of Bitcoin. I think, and you've seen it over the last 7 months. I mean, Bitcoin is down 80% and gold is down less than 18% at the maximum.
Yeah,
has held up very well. It outperformed, even though it lost a little bit, it outperformed basically everything else, unless the dollar, but it was basically stabilizing a little bit your portfolio.
Mhm.
So everybody who was 100% in crypto went through a nightmare over the last 7 months. If you held a reasonable amount of physical precious metals, and especially gold, you've done rather well, and you have liquidity, and you can now probably over the next few months use those beaten down prices in stocks, in crypto to buy again, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So coming back to my history, Bitcoin went from a few cents to $69,000 over the last 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it anticipated all this crazy money printing, balance sheet expansions, negative and low interest rates all the time. But right now we are in a little bit of a different environment. The first time since its inception, actually, you have a really hawkish Fed because inflation is so high. Mm-hmm. And inflation has the Fed has the mandate to bring inflation down to 2 or 3%. Whether they will manage or not, we will have to see. Whether it's possible, given these huge amounts of debts, we will have to see. But at least over the next few months, I expect the Fed still to remain with that hawkish stance. And that means that all the markets will remain under pressure. And then you have Bitcoin, such a volatile asset class, which can go up a few thousand percent, but it can also pull back easily 70, 80, 90% within a few months. And given that...
You think we've hit the bottom now with Bitcoin? I mean, it went down to, I think, $17,500 a few weeks ago, and now it's up at 22,000 or something like that. Do you think it's going to go below 20,000 again? Someone was saying to me the other day that it won't go below 13,000 because that's how much it cost to produce one Bitcoin. A bit like gold, it costs $1,000 to produce an ounce of gold, so gold won't go below $1,000 in value. Do you think that that's the case, or are we going to see it drop again before it goes up to past $100,000, which is what a lot of experts are saying?
Right. To produce 1 ounce of gold actually is higher the cost now.
It's higher now. Okay, yeah. Okay.
12 to 1,400, and there's like 10% of the gold producers are producing at prices around 1,600. Oh. So that tells you if gold goes below 1,600, probably 10% of the supply will rather quickly disappear. And of course, you can say something similar about the Bitcoin market. Prices can go below those numbers for a few days or even a few weeks, but they won't stay there for months and years.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because simply supply would be gone.
Yeah.
So I technically speaking, there is still an open gap in the Bitcoin future around $10,000. So that would be my personal worst case right now.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if we go there, honestly, but I think we've seen a short-term bottom in June. Market has slowly recovered, rather grinding higher the Bitcoin prices since then. At least we get a second test of those, what was it, 17,800, 18,000, maybe 20,000, something like this, like at least a double bottom. That's what we've always seen in those crypto winters in Bitcoin. So that would be normal or typical, but I think there's still too much speculation and way too much optimism, generally speaking, in the market. It's been a nightmare. It's been a bloodbath. I mean, we had kind of a Lehman Brothers moment in the crypto world. Lots of big players, Celsius, Terra, the Three Arrow hedge fund, they all blew up. Voyager blew up. Lots of people have lost everything if they've been with the wrong platform. But I still think there's too much optimism in a bigger picture. So my take is basically a crypto winter usually lasts a year or two.
Okay.
So I'm not afraid that the train is leaving without me right now, right here.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit stronger recovery over the next few weeks and months in Bitcoin, because this asset class always surprises to the up and to the downside. So going back to maybe 30, 35K is not unrealistic. If it struggles already, and that's how it looks right now, it also tells us, well, probably there's more downside, and you want to be still careful. I think you have to understand it's not the time of risk on at the moment. You want to be careful. Cash is king, at least for a few more months, because again, going back to the macro picture, unless the Fed clearly pivots and turns around and at least stops to hike rates, and then at some point comes back with printing money, basically, in quantitative easing, I think this is still away at least half a year or maybe even 12 months or longer. Why? Because we haven't seen real trouble in the financial system, the legacy financial system. Crypto has been blowing out already, lots of players, over-leveraged players, but we haven't seen that in the legacy financial system yet. And I think this will have to happen before the Fed basically turns around and goes back to massive money printing.
Yeah, also a lot of countries now are regulating crypto, which is going to help the price go up. What about the altcoins, the other coins besides Bitcoin? You know, Ethereum, you mentioned Ethereum earlier, and there's others that are interesting. And we've seen some of them go up. I mean, I track probably about 15, 20 different cryptocurrencies on my phone. And it's interesting to see some of them still creeping up, even though Bitcoin has been going up and down. Do you see any of these particular altcoins starting to move? Because obviously we have to look at the technology behind the white paper, look at, you know, the utility of the coin. Do you see any of these other cryptos maybe, I'm not saying outperforming Bitcoin, but, you know, starting to climb and rise and maybe being a safer investment? What's your view on that?
No, I mean, they usually do outperform Bitcoin on both sides, right? If it goes up, if the crypto sector goes up, the altcoins outperform Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the smaller and more speculative they are, the stronger they outperform. And on the downside, it's exactly the same. So you have a lot of beaten down altcoins that have lost 90 to 99% over the last 7 months.
Yeah.
And of course, if you pick some up and you manage to have a good timing, maybe around those lows, you are up already 100% easily in some of those, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I quadrupled an investment last year by putting money in Shiba Inu, and I sold at the right time when it was right at the top. And it started to go down. I saw it go down. I sold all my Shiba Inu, and it was a good investment. But you know, whether I was lucky or whether it was intuition or it was my analysis, I don't know. But you know, what other cryptos do you see that are going to do well besides the usual Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Right. I mean, I think Ethereum has actually strongly outperformed Bitcoin, so that gives us a hint that Ethereum is to be expected to do well over the next few months and years, very likely. I definitely like Solana. I also like Polygon, Matic is the symbol. And I like Chainlink, which is hasn't moved a lot, but I still think it's a very interesting coin.
And of course, Solana's linked to all the NFTs. Now I know the NFT market has had a bit of a drop lately, but you know, there's still a lot of artists putting their artwork in digital format using the Solana platform because it's cheaper than doing it with Ethereum.
Right. So
Yeah.
the tech part of Solana is very interesting and promising, at the same time also questionable. So let's see how this plays out. But I think it's one of the promising altcoins for sure. But also remember, I mean, compared to the last bull market in cryptos, the favorite altcoins besides Ethereum have changed completely, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
remember the
Yeah.
bull
Yeah.
market before, it was totally different names, and now in the last bull run we had other names. Who knows who will be the names in the next bull market, right? You have to be very open-minded in the crypto space, and also not hang on too long to some beaten down projects and coins that maybe will never recover. So that's, I think, very important. But generally, once we have a new bull market in crypto, everything will move up somehow, right? And you will still, even with a little shit altcoin, if I may say it drastically, you will still probably manage to outperform your stock market investment, because simply crypto is so volatile and moving so much to both sides. So 100, 200% in some of those beaten down altcoins, even though the project is not good, can quickly happen. So the problem really is to figure out those that will survive in the longer run. And if you compare this to the boom and bust of the internet bubble in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? It took also quite some time until after the crash in 2001, until it became clear that Amazon and eBay will be the players or the names that will basically become the most important companies out of those stocks that did well in the late 90s. So it could still be a process over the next 1, 2, 3 years until we get more clarity who's going to really be doing well. And then again, it still won't be too late to buy those for the next bull run. So I'm actually right now a little bit patient. I don't think you need to be 100% of your allocated capital invested in crypto right now. A little bit, yes, dabbling on those beaten down prices, yes, but still remembering risk off is right now the mantra.
Yeah. So how do you think this all plays into to travel, and how do you see blockchain technologies being used for the private jet world, for example?
Well, I mean, first of all, if Bitcoin and the altcoins are doing well, and people manage to get their projects financed via a listing or via a token sale, those people have money, and they certainly will be interested in having a private jet. And the more busy they are and the more money they have, they will automatically come. So in the next bull run, you will certainly have a lot of people looking for it again. I think right now, probably lots of people have actually lost quite a lot of money in the crypto world. Some of them have lost everything because they've been maybe in Terra or staked it on Voyager or had their money with the hedge funds, whatever. So it will take some time until those potential clients will recover. But I'm pretty sure that the interest is still there. And down the road, I believe that Bitcoin will move to new all-time highs at some point, and latest by then you will have a lot of people being interested again, because there are some people, those hodlers, who basically manage to sit through these crazy emotional roller coasters and just keep hodling. And if you've done it for quite a few years, you're basically immune to all the negative press and talks that we see right now about Bitcoin, because you bought Bitcoin at much lower prices. And if you bought Bitcoin below $1,000, now it's at 22. Okay, you're still up 22 times, and you've been up 69 times 7 months ago. Okay, but still you're very nicely in the green, and you don't have to be actually worried too much. So these are potential clients and people that certainly are interested in. And I think when it comes to traveling in general, I mean, obviously blockchain just to track travel is a great way. Also, the whole incentive around traveling, how you call it, like the bonus programs or the loyalty programs, is certainly a very interesting part that quite a few projects are already working on to improve. And I think also it depends. I mean, look, if you can create a market where you can basically have offers for private jets, even if it's just a journey for a one-time flight or the whole jet, and that basically being traded in a cryptocurrency, I think that's certainly something very interesting that will happen at some point, because the trend behind crypto is it tries to get rid of those middlemans, and it tries to basically bring in more and more free market kind of setups. It's not that we are there already everywhere. In some places and some projects are extremely centralized, quite the contrary to what the initial idea actually was. But I can very well imagine that this will actually bring much more free market approach to the private jet industry, and open it up probably for a lot more people.
Yeah, certainly, I agree. I mean, I'm talking to 3 crypto people at the moment that are looking at buying an aircraft. One charters already, and the other 2 are sitting on the fence. But someone was saying the other day that even though the price of Bitcoin has gone down, if you don't sell your Bitcoin and you still have it on your cold wallet in storage, it's just the value of the dollars put onto Bitcoin at the moment. If you just sit on it and you don't need to cash that crypto in, even if you bought it at $35,000 or $40,000, just sit on it until it goes up again. And that's the way to do it. But certainly the whole blockchain technology is something that can be used for private aviation. There's been about 25 private jets up until now sold in Bitcoin, but it's been through an exchange, so it hasn't been directly Bitcoin to the owner of the airplane hasn't accepted Bitcoin directly. It has had to go through an exchange. But I'm sure that in the next 12 to 24 months we'll see private jet owners selling their aircraft in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency. And as you said, it's easy to do the transaction because it's just from one person to another. There's no intermediary. And even on the charter front, I mean, if you want to book a charter these days, if you pay with your credit card, you're obviously paying 2-3% more for the charter. And so you have to really book your flight during the week when the banks are open in order to transfer the money. But you can do Bitcoin any time of the day, any time of night. So there's that advantage. And I think probably the way the press has been talking about crypto lately, because it's gone down so much, it's just scaring a lot of people. And then when crypto has been right up, a lot of people have been jumping on the bandwagon. You see all these YouTubers, from their garage, just talking about crypto, and they sound like they know what they're doing. Some of them have made money. But you have to look at this long term and look at the graphs as you do from the very beginning, and you see that Bitcoin is doing what it's always done. It's always gone down by 80% and then gone back up again. And then with the other cryptos, as you said, it depends on what the project is all about. What about the NFTs? Do you think the NFTs? Gary Vaynerchuk is going on and on about you have to invest in NFTs and that. Do you think the NFT market is something that's going to be here to stay, even though it's a bit down at the moment? More people putting their artwork and music, because you're into music, and you produce your own music and that. So do you see the blockchain and NFTs playing a big thing? And is that something that someone should maybe be looking to invest in as well?
Well, I think that NFTs are definitely here to stay. I think they will develop quite a lot over the next few years and move into something that we maybe still cannot imagine or comprehend at the moment. However, I mean, just buying one of those NFT pictures and then use it as my profile pic and paying $10,000s or maybe even millions of dollars is not what I'm doing, and is not what I personally believe in, because it's so hard to figure out the value or the interests of the people, and you have to be really very well connected with those, especially young people who believe in all this, and it's basically a business or a job on your own that you can spend 24 hours a day and still not get your head around actually what's really going on in all these projects, and everything's moving so fast. I think it's very speculative at that point. I would only, or I do only buy something if I really like the art. If I really like the picture or the art behind it, I say, this is something that speaks to me personally, especially also on an emotional level, yes. But it's the same with the traditional art. You have to be really well into it. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be
Yeah.
an expert. You have to have people that are an expert working for you, maybe if you do the higher transactions. um, it's very complicated and it's moving very fast, and just because there's another hype around the corner, I wouldn't buy into it. It's like every few weeks there's a new hype and a new project, and then
It's crazy. Some of the artwork, I look at it and I'm like,
yeah, and then if you
there's some kid in London made $450,000 with his NFTs.
yeah, and I mean there's good ideas and smart young people who move fast, but again, if you're not having the time to really look into it and understand it on a very deep level, I would say be very careful, better hands off, and you only buy something that you really like because you like the picture or the art behind it.
Yeah.
Then it makes sense because you can use it for yourself, you can print it out or whatever you want to do with it, right? But from a speculative point of view or an investment point of view, I would be very careful. It's true that some of them have been beaten down and some prices came down nicely in comparison to where they've been a few months ago. But again, I think the market is way too complex to make a general statement here where it's going, because there's hundreds of thousands of NFTs being created, and there's coming more every day. And um, most of them will just sit there and nobody's being interested in. And you need to figure out which is the 1% that people are maybe interested in of those millions of NFTs that we are already having and will have even more down the road, right?
So it's a bit of a difficult one then, the NFT. Well, what about geopolitics? Now, we've seen this thing with the Ukraine. We've seen the whole Donald Trump, Joe Biden election thing, and now looking like Trump's going to come back again. We've seen a number of governments fall, including the UK government, Boris Johnson resigning. We've seen in Italy, the government's changing as well. How do you think this whole geopolitical situation is going to affect the markets and crypto and gold and private jet travel and all that? I mean, what's your view? Do you think we're going to see a civil war in Europe? I mean, is this thing going to get worse? The whole Russia-Ukraine thing, US election coming up, the midterms now in November. How is all this going to play, do you think, into? Because obviously we saw Donald Trump, in the White House, and the American economy do very well under him. A lot of people did not vote for him because they don't like him. But, if we look at, the way America was performing and also, the price of oil came down nicely. And now, I would say to people, now that the Americans are out there buying oil from other countries, the price has gone through the roof. And I talk to a lot of Americans every day, and a lot of them are saying, well, if Trump comes back, I will probably vote for him, even though I don't like him, because effectively his policies did work and it did improve the American economy. And overall, we didn't have any wars during his term there. I'm not trying to, praise Donald Trump, but if we look at the facts, things did actually improve there. Do you see, him coming back? What do you see happening around the world, or is this just, the way things are? How do you read it right now?
Well, I mean, specifically to your question, I think he will try to come back. Yes. I'm not sure what it will mean in the end of the day, because I think so many things have gone wrong now over the last few years that it will be very difficult to repair them. And I think the position of America, generally speaking, has probably more deteriorated, even though the dollar has been moving up so strongly.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's one of the last weapon that the American empire basically has at the moment, and they're trying to play that card. And that's one of the reasons why we are in this recession, and that's one of the reasons why they cannot turn around right now, because they have to basically fight all these emerging market countries, and they're using their petrodollar standard. I'm not sure if Trump will be able to turn this around rather quickly. I mean,
or maybe nobody can. I think maybe now we've gone down a route which, is the way
it looks very much chaotic. It looks very much that there's so many different interests now playing out, and there's been done so many stupid mistakes. I mean, this whole Russian-Ukrainian war could have been avoided if the Europeans and the NATO and the Americans would have taken a different stance here and just said, look, Ukraine remains neutral, and that's it. I understand it's a very complex situation. Yeah. But I think that could have been avoided, but there was no interest anymore in talks and diplomacy. And here we are, and now we're talking. I mean, yesterday the news from Taiwan is actually really crazy, frightening. Could be that we're going to see a war very soon there too. And I think then we are in World War III rather quickly, right? And this is a horror scenario. But from a game theory point of view, I mean, we know that it's going to be East against West. This is like for many years clear already, even though many politicians were not aware of it or didn't want to have it clear. And it's probably America's last chance now. The longer they wait, the more difficult it will be to remain the superpower on that planet, because China is pushing so hard, and now China and Russia getting closer and closer together. And you have a lot of other countries that basically trying to at least move more to a neutral stance or do business with all sides. So I would say in India, Brazil, Middle East, they're all positioning themselves somewhere in between at the moment. And it's probably the last few weeks, or not weeks, the last few years, if at all, that America has a chance to remain and defend its superpower status, because the longer they wait, the less chances there are. So that's what's playing out right now. It's very dangerous. I think I'm absolutely for a free Taiwan, but I think this provocation move from Pelosi just yesterday doesn't make sense at all. It's just pouring oil into the fire.
It wasn't clever at all. I mean,
yeah.
I remember during my time in the Middle East, that a lot of people did not like American colonialism, which is what the British Empire did for many years. Going out there and trying to conquer other countries and tell people what to do. I think every nation should be free to do what they want and express their culture. It's the same thing with the European Union. I mean, I thought the premise of the European Union, where there's free trade amongst nations, I think was a really good idea. But then trying to force 28 countries into one currency, one law system, or whatever, it's never going to work, because you're talking about 28 countries, 28 different languages, 28 different cultures, which is great and fantastic. And we should celebrate this diversity. But what we shouldn't do is try to put everybody in the same field, because it's never going to work.
Right.
I think
totally agree.
we need to allow people to freely trade. And you're right. Nancy Pelosi's move of going to Taiwan is just provoking the Chinese, and it's just going to accelerate this whole situation. And we could probably see a conflict. Now, if that conflict plays in, I mean, do you think people are going to sit on the sidelines like the whole Russia-Ukraine and just let it play out? Or do you think this time there's going to be military intervention on behalf of the West, which then will inevitably cause a war between the United States and China, which is something that we don't want, because if they start hitting each other with some of the weapons they have, it could be devastating for the whole planet, and of course for the economy.
Exactly. I mean, that's what's playing out right now. I mean, it doesn't look good at the moment. There's nobody who's trying to fight for peace at the moment in amongst all the politicians. I only see warmongers wherever you go and look. It's not looking good, and it reminds us of the setup in front of the First World War 100 years ago, right? I mean, the world somehow stumbled into that World War, which was so devastating, and actually was the reason then also for World War II 2 decades later, or 3 decades later. So I'm pretty worried, and I don't see anybody really trying to calm down the situation and work on diplomacy here. I don't know where this is going to end. Really, it looks very chaotic at the moment, and you really need to be flexible for yourself, and that flexibility, obviously, with a private jet is great. That's actually a big bonus if you can have one and afford one and move around wherever you want, because it could. I mean, things are changing so quickly over the last 2-3 years, and luckily I've been very flexible myself and could move around, and I think that will be one of the most important things, because if we have more war within Europe or in Taiwan or in the South Sea, you want to be able to move around quickly and far away from the mess.
So maybe we all move to Peru.
Peru,
get a nice house in Peru somewhere, live off the grid, and just sit it out for a few years, like a lot of people did during World War II. They moved to South America and they just sat there. South America.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, South America is definitely an interesting place to be when those kind of things should happen. So places like Panama, Paraguay, Costa Rica, Peru maybe, although I don't like the political development over there. That could be interesting, yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that the Chinese don't want a war because, going against America is tough. But yeah, it's certainly worrying what's happening there. And, and we all have to protect our assets, our families, and be somewhere where we're going to be safe. None of us have a crystal ball what is going to happen, but certainly that move there is not going to help. And if you do have a private jet, then you can just jump in your jet. And most people that do own a private jet tend to own 3 or 4 houses in different countries. And so, I mean, one gentleman I worked for at Falcon 900, and we used to fly in between Lugano, Paris, and his ranch in Montana, and a house he had in South Florida. And he lived in all 4 houses. He traveled with very few suitcases because he had clothes in every house he had. And we just used to jet him back and forth. Right. And he would live maybe 3 months here, 2 months there, 4 months there, and then now and again go to other places where we would take him. And there's a lot of high net worth individuals that live that way. And any war won't really affect them because they have the ability to move their families immediately and be safe. But it's the little people that are going to be affected the most. I mean, like the price of fuel has gone through the roof. It's just affecting everybody's life, no matter where you live. The fact that the price of fuel is almost double what it was a year ago, that's brought prices of everything up. That's just affecting everyone. But people that are worth $3, $4, $5 million plus, it doesn't really affect their base because it only costs so much money to live for everybody. There's only so much food you can eat. Yes, you can maybe eat caviar every day, which is expensive, but there's a lot of people that are living borderline between poverty and survival. And of course, that's going to play an effect on what happens there. But anyway, overall, what would be, just to summarize here, Florian, what would be your advice to summarize what we've been talking about now, investment wise, and where can people find you? Of course, on the internet.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think you want to be very flexible. I said it before already. And at the same time, you need to be aware that we're currently in a situation where it's risk off. So you want to be more conservative. You need to have a decent amount of cash sitting in your bank account and also actually in cash paper money, just because we don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, we could see in Europe, Germany, not having any electricity in winter. Who knows? And then your ATM won't work, and your your payment with the card won't work, and so on and so on. So this is like maybe sounding crazy, but it is something that I should definitely. I mean, I want to have it personally, and I recommend it to your viewers and everybody. Make sure.
So having maybe even gold, physical gold coin, silver.
That's the next thing. That's the next thing. But I was talking about cash in the bank account. Also, a decent amount of dollars makes sense in that current environment because the dollar is the one-eyed among the blinds. So it's still it's probably still the best fiat currency on the planet. Even though it loses against all the hard assets, amongst the fiat currencies, it will do better than everything else. And I don't see a big trend change here. And this trend actually is in place since 2008. The dollar has been gaining strength against the euro, against all the other currencies since 2008. So you want to have a decent amount of dollars physically in your hand, paper money in your hand. You want to have it in your bank account. And then, of course, you want to have, I would recommend at least 10% of your total net worth in precious metals physically. Mainly gold, at least 60% gold, maybe 70% gold, 30% silver. Physically in your own hands, ideally not in a vault with the traditional banking system, but in either with one of those companies that sell bullion coins and you can rent a vault with them, or in maybe a different way, or you can find another supplier, independent vaults, not in the banking system.
Yeah.
At least 10% of your net worth in physical precious metals. And yes, also make sure that you have some Bitcoin, ideally not on an exchange, but on your own ledger.
Yeah.
Make sure that you buy it low. This is a crazy asset class. It's moving fast back and forth. And another one that I would definitely recommend is having some commodity stocks that pay nice dividends. I'm a big fan of Rio Tinto and BHP Billiton. It's just like old school commodity blue chip stocks. They each pay more than 10% dividends a year. So you have a nice dividend income. They've been coming down quite a lot. I believe we are very likely in a commodity super cycle over the next 10 years. So commodities will do better than stock markets, generally speaking.
Also, people are buying agricultural land, grow. Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to need shelter and food. It's always been like that. It's always going to be like that.
So that's going to be part of this commodity super cycle. The agricultures should do well overall. Yes, they're also crazy volatile. There are some good companies that you can maybe buy in at beaten down prices. So for example, Nutrien, Mosaic. I even now at those beaten down prices, I like App Harvest and a few others where you have potash supply, because this is all very limited given the war in the Ukraine now. And what else? Keep an open-minded setup or attitude towards everything, questioning everything, make sure that
and of course to the Americans that are watching, you know, Donald Trump's not going to save the world. I think we really need to save our world, each one individually, and not expect somebody from outside to save the world, because as you're saying, Florian, you know, we need to take responsibility for our own financial independence, and that's why we need to spend time to study the markets and what's happening, and come up with the right financial strategy for ourselves, as you've just been recommending. Well, you obviously enjoyed that interview with Florian if you got to the end here, so it's great. And let me know if you want to see more interviews like this, where we're sort of moving slightly off the topic of private jets, but you know, it's still affecting those that do fly private, or thinking of flying private, or buying an airplane, and that, you know, these are important subjects to understand how the world really does tick. Now, on the private jet front, and you know, please subscribe to BizJet TV. Comment below, as I just said, give us a like. That helps the algorithm. And please check this video out about chartering private jets. Is it time for you to start chartering? This is an interesting one for you. And that's all from Fabrizio Poli on BizJet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.